everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Christy. I am so excited to share this video with you today because I just got back from a little girls trip to Montreal, and you guys, I am obsessed with it there. I literally already want to plan another trip to go back. If you haven't been to Montreal yet, like add it to your bucket list, especially if you live in America. Like truly, it's a no-brainer. Living on the East Coast is such a quick flight to get there. I have so much to say, so much to tell you about, but that's what this video is gonna be 12 things to know before you go to Montreal. You will literally love it there, so please, I'm telling you, add it to your travel list. It is the most incredible place. I absolutely loved the city. I will also have a vlog going up of our time there. It's gonna be a lot of like food and coffee, obviously, if you watch my channel regularly. You know that's a big part of it. A big part of my traveling, and probably my favorite part of traveling is trying new food, trying coffee. Their coffee scene, incredible, absolutely incredible. So this will be one Montreal video. I'll have another one coming. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so below. I do predominantly travel videos. I add in some weekly vlogs occasionally, some videos about other things I love, like books, BTS, just day-to-day life things. So if you're interested and want to join our little community here, please subscribe. Let's jump into this list because I have a lot to say. I literally have a little list saved here of things that I want to talk to you guys about. So the first thing that I would recommend knowing before you go to Montreal is that French is the main language spoken there. Now, obviously, a lot of you, and I said this to myself as well, but a lot of you are saying, Christy, Quebec is quite literally like a French-speaking province. Like, that is one of their main languages, is French. And I know that, trust me, I knew that going there, and I knew that French was like a main language in Montreal. But for some reason, I wasn't thinking about the fact that it like literally is the language in Montreal. And that was just something that kind of surprised me, I guess, maybe because it feels just so close to America. It's like literally just north of Vermont. And I just wasn't expecting it. So like my friend and I, we get off the plane in Montreal and we see like all of the signs in French and we're like, oh, that's so cute. All of the signs are in French. We love it. And then we go out into the city and we go to coffee shops and we realize everyone's speaking French, like literally everyone. And it's kind of cool because when you go up to like order at a coffee shop, or if you're greeted in a restaurant or a store, they always greet you in French. And as soon as they realize you're not a French speaker, they immediately switch to English. So it's just kind of a different experience. I think that's one of the things that I love most about Montreal is that since it is so French forward, it really felt like I was in Europe. Like the whole time we were there, we were like, how are we just like a few hours from home, technically? Like it truly felt like we were somewhere really far away. And I think that really added to the appeal of it because it felt like we were on some like far away vacation trip. But in reality, it only took us an hour and a half by plane to get there, and that is lovely. I will say that everyone we interacted with in Montreal also spoke English, so you'll have no trouble communicating if you don't speak French and you do speak English. That was literally a non-issue. We had a couple instances where people didn't really understand us. Like I asked somebody for utensils and they were like, what? And I was like, oh, fork. And then they understood. But for the most part, you'll have no problem communicating if you speak English. They basically switch from French to English immediately. I 100% recommend taking public transportation when you're in Montreal. It is definitely a public transportation centric type of city. It is super easy to use, super easy to understand the system. And one of the things that I really liked was as soon as we got to the airport, it was very clear to see that there was a bus that basically has the sole purpose of taking you to and from the airport into downtown Montreal. So I think it was the 747 bus. And I'll go ahead and put clips over this that shows exactly where this was in the Montreal airport. But you just go to this stand, they have little kiosks where you get your Metro card. You can load up your card with however long you will be there. I think that we did like a 3-day pass, and then you can always add more if you need to. But it was super, super straightforward. Like there were signs everywhere to tell you where to get this bus. And the 747 bus takes you right from the airport right into downtown Montreal. And there's a bunch of stops within downtown, but it made it so, so easy to get from the airport to downtown, and I absolutely love that. Plus, it's just like the price of like taking the bus. I think it's a little bit more expensive, like $10 maybe, I think, to ride. Because it's a farther distance, but I mean, you can't really compete with that. That's amazing. Again, the Metro is super easy to use. There are stops all over Montreal. I think especially for a city that isn't massive, their public transportation system is so nice and so efficient. Montreal is the second biggest city in Canada, I believe, and it is about the size of Philadelphia. So it's not like a Chicago or New York, but they have probably the nicest public transportation system I've ever seen. Very clean, felt very safe, very easy to understand where you're coming and going. So I highly recommend taking advantage of the metro and the buses while you're staying in Montreal. Also, you get to ride the metro and I believe the buses for free on weekends and holidays. Like what? My friend and I literally couldn't believe it. We went into the metro on our last day to refill our card and we were like, why are all of these like open? Like you can just like walk in there. And there was like a little sign on all of them that said the metro's free on weekends and holidays. And we were like, what's happening? I mean, how amazing is that? So again, highly recommend taking public transportation while you're in Montreal. The third point that I'd like to bring up, which is just like a quick little side note, but something that I was not anticipating but noticed very quickly, is that most stores in Montreal don't give you a bag when you purchase something. I don't know if they provide it for you if you ask for it, because I never was really in a situation where I couldn't just fit it in the bag I was carrying. But yeah, we would go to little stores and buy souvenirs and basically nowhere gave us bags. So I don't know if that's like the thing in Montreal. They just don't do bags really in stores. I don't know if you ask, maybe they'd give them to you. Maybe if you know, please put it down in the comments so that we all can be enlightened. But it is something I feel like I should mention because I was carrying like a tiny cute like backpack as my purse. And luckily that had space for little things that I bought. But that obviously would have added up quickly if I was like buying a ton of things at one go. So just something to keep in mind. The fourth tip for Montreal is that Montreal has a ton of underground shopping areas and shopping malls. So we were very confused by this, even though my coworker who's from France and who's traveled to Montreal before, she actually told me about this. She was like, you absolutely have to go check out like their underground mall situations. And I was like, okay. And I think this is likely because of the weather there. I do think they have like pretty cold winters and I think they get a lot of snow, but we would be looking for like restaurants. Like one time we were looking for this juice and smoothie bar that we wanted to go to, and it said that it was in this building. And I was like, this looks like an office building. Like, is it in here? So we went in and asked the guy working the front desk and he's like, oh yeah, it's downstairs. And we went downstairs and we were literally in this giant shopping area. Like we were like, wait, what's happening? Like there was like a food hall. There were all these like restaurants, there were stores. It led to this other part of a different mall, like across the street, where then that went up like 5 stories. It was crazy, like it was wild. So they have all these underground little like secret places. So definitely check those out and also just be aware of that, because if you're looking for some places from the street, you might not know that they're actually inside the buildings that you're looking at, just underground. The fifth tip I have for Montreal is that I really don't think that you need cash. So we kind of went into the trip thinking we would convert some of our cash into Canadian dollars at some point. And honestly, we did not find at any point on the trip that we actually needed cash. I will say that we did not use taxis while we were there. We only did public transportation and walking. So I don't know really how that works as far as like needing to tip a taxi driver. I would assume they all take cards, but we really didn't run into a single situation where we needed cash. However, the one place that I could see you needing cash is if you go to one of Montreal's public markets, which is basically these giant outdoor like farmers markets. They are so cool. We went to one of them. Let me show you what I got there. Look at this adorable tote. So I got this tote bag there. So they have these called Marché Public de Montréal. So it is the public markets of Montreal. We went to Marché Jean Talon. I'm so French. And it was the cutest thing. They had some restaurants, they had some different like food related shops, some other cute little shops, but the bulk of it was this giant farmer's market. And it was so stinking cool. Now, we did not buy anything from the farmer's market stalls because we really didn't need anything at that point. And we also didn't have cash, so we were like, we could ask them if they have cards, but you know, we didn't really need anything. We did stop and get a crepe though. There was like a restaurant that had crepes and we did that and it was delicious. But if you want to buy food at the market, it would probably be wise to have a little bit of cash, especially if you want to buy from like the vendors who are selling their wares from their farms. Also, look at the other side of this. Is you kidding me? How stinking cute is that? I love it. So yes, aside from that, I found we really didn't need cash in Montreal. So do with that what you will. The sixth tip that I have that is something that's a little bit different than here in America. I mean, some restaurants do this, but I feel like that's not normally the case. They don't do the thing that they do in America where when you're at a restaurant, they bring you your bill and then you put your card on there and they take it and, you know, do the transaction away from the table, bring your card back for signature. What they did in every single restaurant we went to in Montreal, so I'm guessing that this is the norm because this happened every single time. The server would bring the bill, but they also always brought an electronic card reader. So you did all of the transactions right at the table. So they would immediately bring the bill. You'd basically give them your card and they would do the transaction right there. So just something to point out, because I was like, oh wait, we're doing this at every single restaurant, so I realized that's probably the norm there. So I feel like it's just worth mentioning, just so that you're aware. In the same vein of conversation, number 7 is that they do tipping the way that we do here in the States. So the tipping expectations are the same in Montreal / in Canada as they are here in America. 15 to 20% is usually what is considered acceptable. So again, another thing to keep in mind when you're dining out. Tip number 8 is some neighborhoods to explore. So we were able to see a lot of different neighborhoods when we were in Montreal. So I just have a rough list of the ones that we walked through and visited and spent some time in. Obviously, there's way more than just this list, but these are the ones that I'm familiar with just based on a few days spent there. So the list includes Old Montreal, Mile End, The Village, Little Italy, Chinatown, Old Port of Montreal, and Plateau Mont-Royal. So all of these neighborhoods have very different feels, have their own little like subculture. It was so fun to walk around and explore these neighborhoods. So I hope that list is helpful. It could definitely serve as a jumping off point as you start planning your trip. I thought that those were some great neighborhoods to check out on my first visit. Number 9 might be the most important tip of all, in my humble opinion. This is definitely the thing that we took away from our trip that we would do different next time. And that is to look up restaurants and have a list ready of restaurants in neighborhoods we know we want to explore. So next time I go to Montreal, now that I've gone, seen some neighborhoods, I will definitely be creating a list of neighborhoods that I want to check out. And I will have some restaurants ready in those neighborhoods. The reason for that is that oftentimes the menu was only in French, which meant that we were having to spend time translating items on the menu before we decided to go into the restaurant. Montreal is very European in the sense that most restaurants do have their menus posted out front. Some of them would post them in English, but a lot of them were just in French, which means that you're sitting there like trying to translate everything that's on the menu. It would be such a time saver if you just had a list of restaurants planned before you even go, especially because if you are like me, and like French food is not like 100% your favorite thing. Like I'll definitely eat it, love it, but that's like not my go-to and I don't want that for every meal. So I do think it's very valuable to have a list of different food options already prepped so that when you're in a neighborhood, you're like, oh look, we have this like sushi place saved that has great reviews and you know what's on the menu. You kind of have already checked out the situation. You don't have to kind of have the time suck of translating the menu in the moment. So I highly recommend kind of figuring out what neighborhoods you want to check out and then doing some research beforehand on the restaurants that you could try there. Tip number 10, and probably the second most important tip on this list, is that Montreal is a big walking, biking, and public transportation type of city. I saw a few taxis while we were there. I'm sure they have Uber, but for the most part, people are walking, biking, and using public transportation. On the days that we were there, we walked 10 to 15 miles every single day. And I loved it. It was amazing. With that in mind, I would absolutely bring comfortable shoes. I feel like that's kind of a no-brainer, especially in a city where you're going to be doing a lot of walking, using public transportation. Comfortable shoes are absolutely key. So I highly recommend doing that, especially because walking is the best way to see a city, in my opinion. So we did so much walking. We saw so much of the city. It was so much fun. But I did notice that. I even noticed that Montreal, which just felt kind of quiet, way more than American cities, and I think it's because honestly people don't drive a lot there. We started to notice that there's not like consistent car traffic everywhere you go like there are in American cities, which was really nice. I actually really like that. Definitely a different change of pace and I really enjoyed it. Tip number 11 is do not assume that your phone will work in Canada if you're coming from America. A lot of countries make it very easy to switch your SIM cards out. I know when I've traveled overseas, you can literally get a SIM card for that country in the airport and switch your phone out right in that moment as soon as you land. That is not really the case in Canada. I think it's a little bit harder to do that there. So I'd definitely call your mobile provider before you go to Canada so you can kind of sort out what the deal is going to be while you're there. I am on T-Mobile. T-Mobile American plans include service in Canada and Mexico. So I had unlimited text and calling, and I had data up to 5Gs, I think. Whereas my friend, who was on a different plan, had to buy roaming credits before she left. So I definitely would look into this. I would contact your mobile carrier and see like what their options are for traveling to Canada. I know there's a few different options, so definitely worth looking into before you go. The 12th tip, and something that you definitely need to keep in mind when you're traveling to anywhere in Canada, they do customs in a different way. I was so glad that I happened to see this before our trip, but someone that I follow on Instagram actually had recently traveled to Toronto for work, and she was like, wow, I did not know that you go through customs in Canada before you come back to the States. She's like, I did not allot enough time for that at the airport. And I was like, huh. So she was right. When we were in Montreal, we went through security and then we went through customs before we flew to America. So definitely leave a little bit of time for that. When I checked in for our flight on Air Canada's app, they told us to be at the airport 3 hours early. I'm not gonna tell you not to do that. We did that and we sat there for a long time. It took us 20 minutes to get through security and customs, but we were flying at a weird time. Our flight left at 6 p.m. on Saturday. So that was kind of a weird time to be flying, I feel like, but I mean, we were in and out of there in 20 minutes. So we were just like sitting there hanging out at the airport. But you do go through security, you do go through customs, which actually is very nice because then when you get to America, you're just like, see you guys later, I'm going home, which is really nice. But definitely keep that in mind that you need to allot time to go through customs before you leave Canada. Well, that is it for my little list of 12 things you should know before you go to Montreal. I absolutely loved it there. I cannot wait to see more of Canada. So far, I've only been to Toronto, Niagara Falls, and now Montreal. I would love to add some more Canadian cities to that list. And honestly, I want to go back to Montreal as soon as possible. Like I literally told Barish, like we are going to Montreal immediately because I loved it so much there. The coffee, you guys, I cannot reiterate enough how good the coffee is there. Every single coffee shop we went to absolutely slapped. I don't know if anybody says that anymore, but it was really good and I loved it there. So I highly recommend visiting Montreal. I really hope that this list was helpful for you. If you have any additional tips for Montreal, I would really love to hear them. So please leave them in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do. Well, what are you waiting for? Thank you so much for being here. As always, I really appreciate you watching my videos and I will see you in the next one.